Yeah. Expect this a little bit, yes, yeah.
Oh.
Yeah, because you know,
The witness, yeah.
That's perfect. You're perfect. Yep.
I don't. Okay, good afternoon, everybody. I'm going to ask for opinions from both sides. We'll start with plaintiff.
Yes, Your Honor. Good afternoon. My name is Everett Parker-Noblitt, here today alongside my co-counsel, Mr. Luke McLaughlin.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
And today we represent the plaintiff in this case, the estate of Sam Farnsworth.
Parker-Noblitt, correct?
Yes.
Okay, great, thank you. Yes.
Yes, Your Honor, good afternoon. My name is Aashka Gupta. I'm here with my co-counsel, Mr. Nars.
Afternoon, Your Honor.
We represent the city of Philadelphia in this matter.
Good afternoon. I know that we all have an understanding that there are some rules of the courtroom, some housekeeping matters that have already been pre-addressed. Does anybody have any questions about those before we get into it?
No, Your Honor. Pretrial order 6 sounds perfect here.
Great. Any other pre-trial matters to address?
None from the plaintiff.
Okay, sounds
Sounds good.
good. Great. So we'll get going then. If you'd like to open whenever you're ready.
Yes, Your Honor. The city knew the problem. They knew the fix. They just wouldn't pay for it. It's the Sunday night of this year's NFC Championship. The Eagles win. They win big. Tens of thousands of people flood Center City, racing down Broad Street. People are high-fiving their friends, hugging strangers, singing "Fly, Eagles, Fly," like they always do. A few fans decide it's going to be a good time to climb some street poles. Now, for years, the city has greased those street poles to keep drunk fans from climbing. And today you'll learn it's work. In all the years they've greased those poles, no injuries, no deaths. But this night's different. For the first time in over a decade, the city of Philadelphia decides to chance it. They decide not to grease the poles. See, it saves them money. You'll get saved the city $10,000 to do nothing. So that night, an 18-year-old boy climbs one of those street poles, 30 feet in the air, and he falls. He dies. He knew the problem. They knew the fix. They just wouldn't pay for it. But members of the jury, that tragedy that night, that is not even why we're here. We're here because just 2 weeks later, after the Eagles win the Super Bowl, the city has the exact same choice. Save $10,000 or save lives. You'll learn today the city makes the same deadly choice. So that night, another fan climbs one of those poles and she falls. She falls right onto the neck of a man below her. That man's name is Samuel Farnsworth. He dies on impact. The city knew the problem. It was fixed. But they wouldn't pay for it. You learn that's what caused Sam Farnsworth's death. That's why today, we as the plaintiff have brought a lawsuit against the city on behalf of Sam Farnsworth's family. And by doing that, we've taken on what's known as the burden of proof. means we'll have a job to do in court today. To prove three things to you by a preponderance of the evidence, meaning more likely than not true. First, that the city of Philadelphia owed a duty of care to Mr. Farnsworth. That means a duty to keep him safe. Second, that they breached that duty by failing to exercise ordinary care, just greasing those poles. And third, that failure is what caused Sam Farnsworth's death. We'll meet that burden today through those three simple facts we talked about today. They knew the problem. They knew the fix, but despite those facts, they wouldn't pay for it. So we can start with that first one. They knew the problem because, frankly, members of the jury, we all do. When Philly sports fans win big, Philly sports fans climb those poles. We've all seen it. And we expect the city will have to admit they did too. We actually expect they'll have a witness to stand and tell you they kept tally of how many people climbed those poles. And that takes us to that second point. They knew the fix to that problem. We expect the city's safety director to take the stand and have to tell them, greasing the poles worked. You'll learn that not a single person even rolled an ankle when they were using that policy. But then, learn that fix cost $10,000. That takes us to fact 3. They wouldn't pay for it. You're going to learn what happened that night at that Super Bowl. As fans are flooding the streets, they notice those are greased. So they did what they always do. You'll learn they did what the city should have prepared for, but didn't. Climb the poles. All to save some money. We'll call the woman who actually climbed that pole that night. She'll take the stand and tell you why she climbed that pole. We expect she'll tell you that she never would have done it. Those poles were greased. So they knew the problem. They knew the fix, but because they didn't pay for it, that's what caused Sam Farnsworth's death. That's why we'll ask that you find the city liable. Thank you for your time today.
Thank you very much, defense.
Yes, Your Honor.
Statement.
May I proceed? Your Honor. Voting counsel. Members of the jury. Super February 9, 2025. An officer named Officer Joe. He's stationed up that exact road. Now, Officer Joe, he spends most of his night at trying to stop people from flipping over cars, or getting too rowdy, or even starting a couple of fires. But you're clear that at some point, that officer sees a woman named Lanny Davidson hop over a fence and try to climb a pole. So you learn he says, no, stop, don't do it. But Lanny Davidson doesn't take no for an answer. You'll learn that Lanny Davidson walks over that pole and she starts to climb until the officer runs over and he says again, I'm an officer of the law, I command you to get. At that point, it's too late. Lanny Davidson, she slips. She falls on top of Sam Farnsworth. Killing him. You'll learn that's how Sam Farnsworth died. Because Lanny Davidson was told no. But she didn't take that no for an answer. And despite Lanny Davidson's actions, the plaintiff is suing the city of Philadelphia for negligence. Folks, this means they gotta show you that the city not only failed to exercise reasonable care, but it was their failure that was a substantial factor in Mr. Farnsworth's death. they're not gonna meet that burden. Because today we'll show that Lanny Davidson was told no, but she wouldn't take no as an answer. And that's exactly why we've raised an affirmative defense of our own. That means we'll prove to you that more likely than not, Lanny Davidson's actions, well, they were a substantial factor in causing Mr. Farnsworth's death. Now, the way we're going to show you both of those things is by asking you to pay attention to the actions the city took and the ways in which Lanny Davidson disregarded those actions. We're going to ask you to focus on three things: the media campaign the city ran, the fences they installed around the polls that night, and the police they had stationed near the. So first, the campaign. Because you're going to hear that at the city, they actually had the mayor of Philadelphia announced that climbing poles was dangerous, that somebody could die. Lanny Davidson was aware of this. And still she chose to climb that pole. And you're going to learn, folks, that the poles weren't greased on February 9th, not because the city wanted to save $10,000, because people found a way to climb the poles even when they weren't. Folks, you'll come to understand that when Lanny Davidson was told, no, by the media, she doesn't listen. Then I'll introduce you to the fence around the pole that night, because you'll learn that the same pole Lanny Davidson climbed, well, she had to hop a fence to get to. So you'll learn that when the city put a message there to not let citizens get near that pole, well, Lanny Davidson, she says no, and she hops. Which leads us to the last point, the police. I mean, you're going to hear from the director of public safety for the city of Philadelphia, and folks, he will tell you that the police were stationed, and the police told Lanny Davidson, no, do not climb that pole, not once, but 2 times. And you'll hear she climbed the pole. Folks, it's going to become apparent that every time Lanny Davidson was told no, she did not accept that no for an answer. So at the end of today's trial, when the plaintiff asks you to find the city of Philadelphia live, we'll ask you to say no. And find it not live. Thank you for your time.
All right, Plaintiff, do you have a first witness to call?
Yes, Your Honor, the plaintiff calls Ms. Lanny Davidson.
Yeah.
Thank you, Your Honor. Good afternoon.
Afternoon.
Could you go ahead and introduce yourself to the jury?
Of course. Hi, everyone. I'm Lanny Davidson.
Can you tell us a bit about yourself?
I'm a student. I'm a huge Eagles fan. I'm from around here. Who isn't, you know? Technically, I'm from over, but I still claim it.
Is that an Eagles jersey you've got on under here?
Yeah. Yeah, I'm a big fan, but, you know, I'm wearing it today.
And who's Sam?
He's the one who got me the shirt. He's my best friend.
Could you give the jury that person's full name?
Sorry. His name is Sam Farnsworth. Smartest person I ever.
And you said you're wearing that jersey for Sam. Can you tell us how he died?
Sure. Earlier this year, we went to the Super Bowl parade together in Philly after the Eagles won. He died.
Okay. I want to start by talking about whether there were any problems at parades like the Super Bowl. Okay.
Okay.
Had you ever been to a celebration or a big sporting event in Philly before?
Of course. I've been to them a couple of times.
Have you seen what goes on there?
Yeah, it's pandemonium. People are flipping cars, it's setting fires, climbing like anything that they could find. It can get pretty crazy sometimes.
And you said climbing anything they can find. What would that include?
You know, like
garbage trucks, poles, stuff like that.
You said climbing poles. Had you seen that with your own eyes before that day? At that Super Bowl?
Yeah, of course. And, born and raised here, I've been seeing people do that.
When we talk about that problem of people climbing those poles, I want to talk about whether or not there might have been a fix.
Okay.
Ma'am, when you saw those people climbing poles, did you ever see the city do anything afterwards? Those later events?
Yeah. A couple of times I'd seen people grease the poles. I mean, I'm sure you've heard about people doing that before, but I saw them do it a couple times.
Would you recognize some photos of that if I showed it to you today?
Yeah,
I'll be showing opposing counsel copies of exhibit 23 and 22. I'm handing copies to it. And could you tell us what I just handed you?
yeah, these are two pictures of city workers in Philadelphia greasing poles. And you can kind of see right here when they grease it up, you can see it. It looks kind of gross.
Ma'am, did they appear fair and accurate when you last saw them?
Yeah, they do.
Or at this time we move exhibits 22 and 23 into evidence.
Any objection?
None.
Okay, they will be entered.
And I'm handing copies to publish the jury. 22 and 23.
There you go.
Zero. I want to break down what's meaning here.
Okay.
And we can start with exhibit 23. What are we looking at?
This is a photo of one of the poles on Broad Street and South Street. You can see the city workers right there. He's putting up some of the grease on the poles.
Let's look at that second one, exhibit 2. Do you see any grease on that pole?
Yeah, like I said, you see the white stuff at the bottom of the poles, and like the middle and stuff, that's the grease I was talking about.
You said you went to earlier celebrations. Is this what those poles looked like then?
That's what I remember them looking like. I think I went in 2018, 2023, 2022 as well, and each time they all look like that.
And when you were faced with these poles, what was going through your mind?
You know, I climbed the poles before. It's a Philly tradition. I always kind of wanted to do it. When the poles were greased like this, I mean, I don't want to do it.
So, man, when these poles were greased, did you ever climb these poles?
No.
Okay. Well, we talked about the problem. Let's talk about the fix. Well, man, greasing those poles, you said you never climbed them. Do you know if other people did?
I don't remember seeing anybody doing that, but I'm sure people still try to.
Objection, Your Honor, to a lack of personal knowledge. Might I be heard? Your Honor, the witness's first part of her answer was, I've never seen anybody doing that. And then she says, but I'm sure that they try to. It's that second part of the answer that we think lacks foundation, given the first part.
Your Honor, we're fine striking that second half.
All right, we'll start that.
Yes, Your Honor.
And I want to talk about whether or not that might have worked. Your Honor, this time I'm showing a copy of pre-admitted exhibit 45 to opposing counsel. I'll be handing a copy to the witness. And this document, the second page. Do you know what it says this is from?
Objection, Your Honor, to a lack of personal knowledge under Rule 602. Might I be heard?
Sure.
Your Honor, at this point, the witness is being shown this document, asked questions about it, who's it from. There's no foundation on the record that she actually knows what the document is or that she's familiar.
This is a pre-admitted document.
Yes, Your Honor.
I'm gonna ask that you lay a little bit more foundation, namely getting onto the record exactly what the document is first. And then go ahead.
Yes, Your Honor.
Yes, Your Honor.
So it's standard.
Yes, Your Honor. Ma'am, can you just read the title of this document for us?
Sure, it says expert report of Brian Denton.
Now, Your Honor, this time I'll be reading a portion of that report onto the record. Specifically, point 5 on page 15. The city was negligent for not greasing the poles. The city of Philadelphia knew that greasing the poles would reduce the frequency of climbing and likelihood of injury. Your Honor, at this time we'll be approaching the retrieve and publishing to the jury. And I want to talk about what those poles looked like during Super Bowl Sunday this year. Okay. Yeah, did they look like this? Or the poles?
No, they didn't.
And when you went out onto Broad Street that night, what did you see?
The Eagles just won. Everyone was storming at everywhere. We were all flooding the streets. I saw people climbing poles, climbing garbage trucks. I wanted to do it too.
Did you go up to a pole?
Yeah. Just right outside this building. We were at a bar next to it, and Sam and we came out of that bar, and I saw a pole. I didn't see any grease on it, so. You know, I went closer.
Man, could you tell us what was going through your mind? You went up.
I've been here all my life. I wanted to participate in the Philly tradition. I climb up. I see everyone. It's a sea of green, and you know everyone's cheering me on. I kind of felt like I was on the top of the world.
I want to talk about who was cheering you on that night. Now, do you remember anyone telling you no as you climbed up that pole?
No, like 80 people or ops or anything like that.
And that night you climbed the poles, did you see cops there that night?
Yeah, I did.
Did you see other people?
Yeah, I mean, everybody was in Center City.
So then what were those people doing that you saw as you climbed up that pole?
No, like I said, everybody was cheering me on. Everyone was cheering. Fly, Eagles, fly.
Ms. Davidson, you said you saw cops that night. Do you mean everyone was cheering you on as you climbed up that pole?
I do. Like I said, everybody was cheering me on while I was up.
And we're gonna have to talk about what happened next.
Okay.
And after those people cheered you on, did you get to the top?
I was at the top. I didn't last up there too long.
Why not?
My fingers and got kind of sweaty. I slipped on the pole. Fell down.
And what happened when you fell?
And Sam was standing there. I looked down, and next thing I remember, I fell on him. Wasn't moving. Just nothing but blood.
Thank you, man. You're all right about the bro.
Examination?
Yes, Your Honor.
May I proceed? Good afternoon, Ms. Davidson.
Good afternoon.
Yeah, you were just asked an interesting question on direct examination. You were asked, was everybody cheering you on as you climbed the poles, right? You were asked that?
Yeah, everyone was cheering on.
And that's exactly the answer you give. You said everybody that day was cheering you on, right?
Exactly, everyone was cheering me on.
Ms. Davidson, that's not true.
And Nicole, like the city people were cheering me on. But
Ms. Davidson, yes or no, everybody was cheering you on that day.
everyone was cheering me on. One time Sam told me not to come down, but everybody else, the cops, everyone there, they were chanting, "Fly, Eagles, fly."
Well, ma'am, you just mentioned something interesting. When you said everybody's cheering you on, what you really meant was your close friend Sam was telling you, no, don't do it, right?
He shook his head at me a couple times.
Well, let's see if he really shook his head, man. Let's go through exactly what happened before you climbed that pole. Now, what happens is you get onto the streets of Philadelphia that night, right?
Yeah, I mean, the second that clock hit 0, we all stumbled out of the bar and ran onto the street.
Okay, so the clock hits 0, you're stumbling out of the bar, and you see a pole somewhere on the street that you're at, don't you?
Yeah, it was right outside on this corner.
Okay, so the pole right outside on the corner, you tell your friend Sam, hey, I'm gonna go climb that pole.
Exactly.
You told me a moment ago Sam just shook his head at you?
Yeah, when I was on the pole.
Well, ma'am, that's not true. Sam said, no, don't do it, didn't he?
Well, that was when I was on the ground. I was saying when I was up there, he shook his head at me.
Well, ma'am, is it your testimony? Your friend Sam did not tell you not to climb the pole when you were on the ground?
I'm sorry, that's not what I meant to say. That's what I said. I said when I was on the ground, he told me not to do it, but when I was up there, he just shook his head. That's what I said, miss.
Okay, so what you mean is he didn't just shake his head, he actually tells you, no, don't, right?
Right, like I said, when we were on the ground, that's what he said to me.
But
He
you
told me
don't,
not to do it.
you don't listen to your friend Sam, do you?
I mean, I went to the pool, sure.
That's right, you get to the pole and you see that there's a fence blocking access, right?
Yeah, it was pretty small. I kind of pushed it aside and stepped over the fence.
Well, then that's interesting, when you see the fence blocking the pole, you don't decide to turn away and go somewhere else, do you?
No, I mean, everyone else was doing it.
You made the decision to hop the fence.
Right.
And then after you made the decision to hop the fence, that's when you decided to climb back up to the pole.
Yeah, I mean, that's exactly what I needed to get up to the pole. It sort of like boosted me up to the pole, and without it, I don't even know how I would have gotten up there.
So that's the question after you hop the fence, that's when you climb up, right?
Exactly. I hopped the fence and I used it to boost me up onto the pole.
And then, again, your friend Sam tells you, no.
Yeah, and told me not to go up.
It's not just Sam who tells you no. Doesn't a police officer see you and also tell you not to climb the pole?
No, I wouldn't have done that if the police officer told me don't do that.
No, you don't remember a police officer telling you not to climb the pole?
It's not that I don't remember. That didn't happen.
Did a police officer not come to the foot of that pole and tell you don't climb up there?
No, ma'am.
Mr. Narsapur, can you write that down, please? Let's talk about something we do agree on, Miss Davidson.
Okay.
Because the thing is, you do regret climbing up the pole that day, don't you?
Of course. What do you?
Well, I'm asking you, and the answer is you do regret it.
Of course, Sam was my best friend.
I want to see if you knew whether climbing that pole would have been dangerous or not. Because like you said, you have an Eagles jersey on, you're an Eagles fan, right?
Die hard.
You were in Philadelphia to attend the Eagles Super Bowl performance.
Right. Sam and I couldn't afford to go to NOLA. Figured the next best thing was to come back home.
I mean, you know that Philadelphia fans, they're as passionate as you, so a lot of times there's chaos after these sorts of games, right?
Yeah, some people are even more passionate than me. I'm not going to set fires or anything like that.
That's right. I remember on direct examination, you said some people would climb on garbage trucks and things like that.
Yeah.
Some people would climb on poles.
Yeah. Bus stops, anything really that they could find, I guess.
Well, ma'am, it is your belief that the city always tried to stop people from doing those sorts of things.
Objection, Your Honor, calls for speculation, may I be heard? Sure. Under Rule 701, witnesses can only testify, lay witnesses, to things they've observed personally. They've sensed with their five senses. This is asking this witness to speculate into the mindset of the city and whether or not they were thinking of exercising that care. That's speculation.
Yes, Your Honor. That's why I didn't ask this witness what did the city intend to do, just what her belief was. The question was, it's your belief that the city always tried to stop these events. That goes not to anybody else's mindset, but to what she believed based on the thing that she saw. So it's not speculation because she's testifying to her own beliefs.
Response, Your Honor?
Sure.
Your Honor, specifically this question asked if she believed they were trying. That's asking the witness to speculate about whether or not the city was trying. It's a miss.
Sustain your objection and ask that you're based to ask her about who she's witnessed or seen.
Absolutely, Your Honor.
Yes, Your Honor.
I want to see if the city ever tried to stop people from engaging in those types of activities.
Okay.
Now, you're familiar with a couple of articles about fans engaging in destructive behavior, right?
Yeah.
In fact, one time you read an article about somebody who died after falling off of a pole.
Yeah. Okay.
You knew about the behaviors that fans engage in because you were there and witnessed.
Yeah, like I said.
And then you were shown a copy of an article specifically about a fan who died after falling from a porch.
Yeah, when the term.
Your Honor, foundation lies in hearsay. Maybe her counsel is asking a question to this witness about what she read in an article. That article is an out-of-court statement being used for the truth in the matter asserted.
Yes, Your Honor, this question is just foundational. We're getting her to agree that she knows what the article is. We'll admit it later, and we're happy to answer the hearsay objection.
I overruled.
Yes, Your Honor.
That was a yes to my question. You read an article where a fan falls from a pole and dies.
I'm not sure which specific article, but, you know, when the attorneys talked to me before this trial happened, they showed me some articles. I said I wasn't sure which specific ones, but I knew the facts, sure, I'm around here.
Well, let's talk about the specific article you were shown. Could you flip to article 20 in that binder over there, or 20 rather?
I'm there.
Ma'am, this is one of the articles you were shown when you were asked questions by your lawyer, right?
Yeah, when the attorneys asked me, they showed me all these articles. I don't remember if I read this one specifically, but yeah, that's what they showed me.
Well, I'm not asking if you read it, I'm asking if you were shown it, and you were shown that article.
Yeah.
It's a fair and accurate copy of what you were shown, right?
Yeah, this is what the attorney showed me.
So we offer the 20 evidence.
Any objection?
Yes, Your Honor, to hear.
Go ahead.
Yes, Your Honor, these are out of court statements. There are a number throughout this article. First, from Colin Miller and James Bray, the actual authors of the article. They're asserting statements with truth value. And additionally, Your Honor, there are a number of statements that are hearsay within hearsay, including statements from the New Orleans police chief and statements actually from the police as well.
May I have a copy of the article?
Yes, Your Honor, I'm happy to approach.
Appreciate it. Response.
Yes, Your Honor. Well, we're not using any of the statements in these articles for any truth value they may assert. Rather, we're using them for the notice that they put on anybody who read this article, and even Ms. Davidson, that climbing the poles could be dangerous. We told you in opening statements, we told you about a media campaign. This is part of the notice that media campaign would put any of his readers on.
Okay.
Response, Your Honor. Your Honor, currently on the record, we don't have any foundation to support that this is being used for notice. If I may proffer, we actually expect this witness would be able to testify that she didn't see this article until after she was deposed. She certainly wasn't put on notice before taking the action in this case. Therefore, they won't use this for notice, and any truth value in here is intimate.
Yes, Your Honor. One of the questions I asked before we tried to admit this article was whether or not Ms. Davidson was familiar with the general behavior and actions of the people described in this article. Now, whether or not she read this exact article, that's not material for notice purposes, as long as we know she's familiar with the types of behaviors described in this article, and this article says those types of behaviors are the one that's dangerous. That's enough to satisfy the notice requirements by a preponderance standard.
Response?
Briefly.
Yes, Your Honor. Your Honor, if they want to admit that sort of testimony for that purpose, just that she knew about these instances, they can do that without entering this specific article onto the record. It's still hearsay.
I'm gonna overrule your objection.
Yes, Your Honor.
Ms. Davidson, you were shown this article when you were talking to your lawyers about this case, right?
That's true.
And so you know that in that article, the city warns people that climbing on poles can be dangerous.
I don't know if I remember reading the article. I can now if you want me to.
Well, ma'am, you know that's what it says in there, right? Would you like me to point to where it says it and you can see if I read it? On the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5th paragraph, there's a statement that says, we will continue emphatically urging people not to climb poles, structures, or fixed objects at any time. The city said, isn't that right?
Yeah, they knew that people were climbing on the pole and stuff, and they were telling us not to do that.
And he said people were climbing on the poles. You chose to climb on the poles, didn't you?
I did.
Thank you. We have nothing further.
Readers? Sorry.
May I publish exhibit 20?
Yeah, go ahead.
And yes, Your Honor, we do have a redirect. May I proceed? And this media campaign, did you see it before you find that poll?
I don't remember seeing any media campaign like that one in particular.
I mean, they mentioned a fence. Did that fence stop you from going over it and climbing up?
No, like I said, I don't think I would have been able to even get up there without that fence. I stepped over it and I pretty much used it to kind of boost me up onto the pole.
Thank you, ma'am. But nothing further.
Any recross?
No recross, Your Honor.
Thank you.
We're supposed to move right there. Is everybody good to do that?
Defenses.
Plaintiff is as well.
Great, all right, so defense, do you have a witness you'd like to call?
Yes, Your Honor, we call Walker Edwards. And before Mr. Edwards takes the stand, can I take those exhibits away?
Yeah, absolutely.
May I proceed?
Go ahead.
Good afternoon, sir.
Good afternoon.
Could you introduce yourself to the folks on the jury?
Sure. Hi there. Nice to meet you. My name is Walker Edwards. Pleasure.
What do you do for a living, Mr. Edwards?
I am the Director of Public Safety for the City of Philadelphia. I've been doing it since 2016.
What kind of education do you have to hold a job like that?
I went to UCLA for undergrad. I have a double majors in urban studies and criminal justice. Then I went on to pursue my master's in public policy at Drexel, right here in Philly.
So, Mr. Edwards, how did you become involved in this case?
Right. So what my job is to make sure any celebration in Philadelphia is as safe as it can possibly be. So anything from political demonstrations to concerts in the park, even in 2025, the first one, the Super Bowl, I was in charge of all safety procedures.
You just mentioned the 2025 Super Bowl. Before we get into specifics, I want to talk about the sports culture in Philadelphia.
All right.
Now, did you ever oversee sporting events besides the 2025 Super Bowl?
Yes, ma'am. Since 2016, when the Phillies won in 2018, the Birds won in 23, the Pennant in 24, all those safety procedures and all those events is what I oversaw.
You're telling us you oversaw those events. Did you actually go to the streets and were you there observing them too?
Absolutely. That's a part of my job, to be on the ground during those times. And way back in 2008 was the first time where I felt a call to action get involved, was when I saw someone just start climbing a pole.
Okay, so someone's climbing a pole, you feel this call to action. What do you do in response?
In 2008, I couldn't do anything, but in 2018, when people started to climb those poles, I wrote a memo to the mayor, and we decided to grease them, and that's what we did.
So how long were you greasing the poles from 2008?
We started in 2018, and we greased the poles after every major sports victory all the way to 2023.
Now, greasing the poles, did that eliminate people from climbing them like you had hoped?
No, even though there was grease on the poles, people and Philadelphians, sometimes a little intoxicated, they were able to climb those poles.
Well, I want to see if somebody in specific was able to climb that pole. Can you recognize a picture of a fan climbing a grease pole that was shown to you?
Yes, ma'am.
Now, we're actually going to show, your permission to show a still of a video exhibit to opposing counsel before showing it to the witness. Mr. Haverford, exhibit 40. Approaching Mr. Walker, Edwards with the same. Do you recognize what I've just handed you?
Yes, ma'am, I certainly do.
What is it?
This is from 2022. It's looks like a still image of a video of a man climbing up a pole with what appears to be a large rope.
We offer that still of exhibit 40 into evidence.
Okay, any objections?
Just the still, Your Honor, no.
Okay, I'm gonna enter this as defenses 47.
Yes, Your Honor.
Still of the video.
Yes, right, it's exhibit 40,
40?
yes, yes.
Okay.
Now, you mentioned that the person climbing that pole that happened in 2022, were you still greasing the poles in 2022?
Yeah, we were. And as you can see here, it didn't work. It wasn't as effective as we wanted it to be. People still found creative ways, pretty ingenious ways to soak it up with poles. As you can see here, it's someone actually holding up a rope to make sure they could climb up. We saw reports of people bringing towels and literally drying the holes of grease. Even a few individuals had their cars parked near the pole, coincidentally, came back the night afterwards and used their roof of their car to jump up onto a pole.
Well, let me get one thing clear, Mr. Edwards. You were able to grease the poles. Were you able to grease the ropes or the towels or the cars that people brought to stop them from using it?
absolutely nuts. If someone's bringing something from home, someone in my job, I just can't do anything about that.
Did you grease the polls the night of the Super Bowl on February 9th?
No, ma'am, my office didn't issue that directive.
Why not?
As you can see here, and there's plenty of other photos and videos to go with it, it just didn't work. People kept climbing those poles even if they were greased. So we decided to come up with some new safety procedures we were gonna try.
What were the new safety procedures that replaced the pole greasing?
Well, there was about a dozen of them, but I'll give you the big three. We had the mayor's office launch a campaign about educating Philadelphians to say that it is extraordinarily dangerous to try and climb those poles. Second is we did, for the first time ever, we had fencing installed around every city pole in the entirety of Philadelphia city square to kind of barricade from those. And the third thing is we had our men and women in blue, police officers. There are 200 officers there patrolling the streets.
Okay, let's talk about those big three, the fencing, the media, and the police. I want to start with the media, sir.
Sure.
Do you know if the mayor posted an announcement on media saying people shouldn't climb poles?
Yes, ma'am, I do. I saw that social media post.
Would you recognize a copy of that post if it were shown to you?
I certainly would.
Could you flip to exhibit 33 in your binder?
I'm there.
What do you see?
This is that social media post posted by Fox 29 Philly. I saw it.
Is it a fair and accurate copy of that post?
Yes, ma'am, it certainly is.
We offer exhibit
Any objection?
No, Your Honor, we're fine with seeing that.
What does the mayor say in that post, sir?
Well, that's the mayor right there, in case you didn't know. And it says, "Attention Philly, don't climb light poles." And even in the comment section here, how the Philadelphia mayor, Rachel Holt, had a special message for Eagles fans, Philly residents, and there's a link in the bio to that article.
That you mentioned another part of the big three were police. Do you know if there were policemen deployed at the block where Lane Davidson was that month?
Yes, ma'am. My office issued a directive of 200 officers from 10th to 20th Street. Every single block had 20 police officers in uniform walking around, making sure people were okay.
Would you rather?
Objection, Your Honor. Need for personal knowledge may be heard. Currently, this line of questioning and this witness's answer calls for this witness to speculate. While this witness would be able to testify to what directive he gave, this witness just stated that he knew they were walking around and trying to make sure people were safe. That's entering the officer's mindset. He can't do that. That's speculation.
Response?
Yes, Your Honor. I mean, we heard that it was a directive from the Director of Public Security for the city of Philadelphia for those officers to be there. As to whether that's speculation that they were walking around trying to keep the people safe, I mean, that was their job title. They were policemen. That's what they were supposed to do. It's certainly not speculation if that's the reason why they were on the streets.
Response, Your Honor. It's one thing to give a directive. It's another thing to be able to state that the directive was followed. This witness hasn't laid any foundation that he would be able to know that, no foundation he was there that night to take that step further. That's speculation.
Response, Your Honor, if the issue is whether or not the policemen were good at doing their job, and that's a matter for a cross-examination, that goes to weight of admissibility.
Just for lack of recorder, could you briefly repeat the last portion of your answer?
Gosh, certainly. As court reporters, you come in handy. I believe I mentioned something about how there were police officers there, 20 every block, and they were walking around.
Okay, overruled.
Yes, Your Honor.
Would you recognize a copy of the report from one of those officers if it were shown to you?
Absolutely.
Could you flip to exhibit 6 in that binder?
Sure. I'm there.
What do you see?
This is the Philadelphia Police Department incident report. It appears to be from an officer, Joe Jones, 44182.
Is it fair and accurate?
Yeah, this is the same as last time I've seen.
We offer exhibit 6.
Any objection?
Yes, Your Honor, to hearsay.
Go ahead.
Yes, Your Honor. These are out-of-court statements being the matter started, one from the police officer itself. And then further, Your Honor, on the second page, there are a number of statements from other people that this police officer is reporting on, including discussions of what the crowd was saying in the incident, and then what was actually said by the people in this case, Miss Lane Davidson and Sammy Farnsworth.
Yes, we're actually using this report for impeachment purposes as described under Rule 613B. Your Rule 613B says that if a witness makes a statement, we can confront them later with extrinsic evidence that that statement is false. Now, if you'll remember in the cross-examination of Lanny Davidson, I specifically asked her whether or not a policeman told her to stop. I even asked Mr. Narsapur to write that down when she says, "No, ma'am, that did not happen." This report is giving us extrinsic evidence that that's not the case. There was an officer at that scene, and if I may profit what was saying in the report,
Sure.
he'll say that he told her to stop. Under 613B, that's allowed for impeachment purposes.
Response, Your Honor. Your Honor, that still does not defeat the fact that this is hearsay, or there are a number of statements that aren't being used for that purpose. And further, Your Honor, as the counsel just stated, they would have to confront the witness with this report. That's not what they're doing here. They wrote this down earlier, and they've given this witness no chance to respond.
Response, Your Honor? Rule 613B doesn't require us to confront the witness with the extrinsic evidence. It just requires that we get an answer, a chance for her to allow or deny the statement that she made. That's exactly what we did. I asked her specifically, did an officer stop you? She says no. This is extrinsic evidence that that's not true under 613B. Any other statements in this report, we're happy to issue a limiting instruction. They're not to be used for the truth.
Okay.
Response, Your Honor.
Go ahead.
Your Honor, if I could draw your attention to language of Rule 613B. Yes, Your Honor. That says that extrinsic evidence is only admissible for this purpose if a witness is given the opportunity to explain or deny the statement. While opposing counsel can certainly talk about that in the cross-examination, bring up this matter without ever showing the record and giving her the chance to explain what is in this statement, that's not satisfying that second requirement, point B for Rule 613.
Response on those grounds?
Sure.
Your Honor, the statement that we're supposed to confront the witness with is not the extrinsic evidence of the inconsistency, but rather the statement she makes herself that is the inconsistency. Under 613B, as long as we give her a chance to explain or deny that statement, which we did on cross-examination, we can present evidence to confront her, or rather to show the court that there was the inconsistency.
Okay, I agree that you've satisfied 613B here and that you're using this for that purpose. I understand that you have further issues outside of those specific statements.
Mhm.
Would you agree to eliminate instruction that you're only using the precise paragraph or whatever it is, I'm not sure, that is being used to impeach that witness and nothing else for the truth of the matter within this document?
Yes, Your Honor, if everything else was redacted, that would be
Great.
fine.
Okay. So with that limiting instruction, go ahead.
Yes, Your Honor.
Yes, Your Honor.
Mr. Edwards, does the officer on duty that day say whether or not he told Miss Davidson, no, don't climb the poles?
Yes, ma'am. On page 2 of this incident report, paragraph 3, it's like the third line. It says that I was the closest officer, Mr. Jones. About 150 feet away, I yelled, "Get down."
How many times does he tell Miss Davidson not to climb the pole?
It looks like twice.
Thank you for your time, Mr. Edwards. We have nothing for.
Oh.
I'll approach and retrieve the video exhibit.
Cross-examination, whenever you're ready.
Yes, Your Honor.
Your Honor, apologies, before cross-examination, may we publish that still life of exhibit 40? We have a paper copy of it.
Sure.
Never mind, Your Honor, no paper copy, so constructively published that very.
Like not saying, show it to them.
Oh, I would love it. I would. I'll give you one.
The cuts went back in the city. So.
The court reporter does.
I'm fine with that.
We'll do a quick publishing. Thank you, Your Honor.
Whenever you're ready.
Yes, Your Honor. Good afternoon, sir.
Good afternoon, sir.
I want to start by talking about that police report you just mentioned. Okay? Now, sir, this police report, that's from an officer, Officer Jones, right?
Yes, sir.
So you certainly weren't watching over Officer Jones that night, were you?
No, sir, I was not.
You didn't see what happened on the ground, did you?
No, I wasn't there.
And so as far as you're aware, the defense, they're not going to call Officer Jones to the stand, are they?
I have no idea what those attorneys are going to do.
So I want to talk about what you do. You're the Director of Public Safety for the City of Philadelphia. True?
Yes, sir.
And as the director of public safety, it's your job. Keep people in the city safe.
Absolutely, any public events.
And so we can agree. If you have a chance to keep people safe, you should take it.
Absolutely, it's the highest priority we have.
And so certainly, if you have the chance to spend some money to save lives, you absolutely should do that.
Certainly, if there's something, a reasonable measure that can be taken that's effective, we are absolutely going to spend that money.
I'm going to talk about those measures you take. Sir, as you mentioned on direct examination, for years, you greased the polls, right?
Yes, from 2018 to 2023.
You'd actually call that a common sense solution, wouldn't you?
That's right. I came up with it and it solved the problem at hand, it didn't fix the issue.
Well, sir, you said it solved the problem at hand. That problem was, it was pretty easy to climb those polls, true?
Not for me, certainly not, but for some reason Philadelphians, some of them could.
But those surfaces, they weren't as slick as they would be if they were greased, right?
Yes,
And people actually climb it, right?
yes, sir. From that still image we've seen, that's one of the many individuals who have tried to climb one of the city's light poles.
So you knew that thing, didn't you?
Sure, that is inherently an extraordinarily dangerous thing to do for not only the person climbing, but the people underneath.
Like we said, and you watched that happen during the Phillies parade in 08. That's what inspired you to take this job.
Yes, sir. That's when I joined the mayor's campaign as a legislator, and I worked my way up to director, which I am.
So we talked about the problem. I want to talk about whether or not you knew that grease was the fix.
Okay.
So when you instituted that policy, greasing those polls in 2018, you kept track of how many people climbed those, right?
Yes, sir. My office routinely received reports of how many people were seen and then written down trying to climb those poles. You're right.
And those numbers, you know them still, right?
Absolutely. There was 12 in 2018 for the instances of someone climbing a pole.
Objection, Your Honor, to information learned through hearsay. Might I be heard? Sure. Your Honor, Mr. Edwards just testified that he was given reports of how many people tried to climb the poles. We're objecting to those reports as hearsay, as out of court statements that are now being used for the truth of the matter, as in 10 or 12 people tried to climb those poles.
Thoughts on it? Yes, Your Honor. We're using this to show this witness was put on notice. That this witness knew that there were people climbing these poles. Your Honor, if I may proffer, we're going to show that this number of reports was actually significantly higher when those polls weren't greased.
Yeah, briefly.
Well, Your Honor, the question is notice for what? There's no foundation that these reports were given to Mr. Edwards, whether the notice came before he decided not to grease the polls, or if it was a much later time when he received these reports. We're missing foundation as to what the notice was for. And if it was for greasing the polls or not greasing the polls, we're missing the timeline of when these reports were received and when the notice was actually delivered.
Respond.
I think that's a fair area for cross-examination, so I'm gonna overrule the objection.
Yes, Your Honor.
Sir, just to clarify, you received those reports right after those parades, right?
Right after the parades and every year except 2005.
So you started greasing those polls back in 2018.
Yes, sir, we did.
Yet about 8 people reported climbing those polls.
In 2018, yes.
Highest number you ever got was in 2023, right?
15 individuals were reported trying to climb one of those poles.
Right. When you were still greasing those polls, the highest you ever got was 15 people.
That's right, in 2023.
But so before the Eagles Super Bowl run in 2025, you decided to switch your plans.
Yes, sir. My office deemed that greasing those poles was an ineffective solution, so we decided to try something else.
So for that NFC championship game against the Commanders, you didn't grease the polls.
Yes, sir, we did.
So like you said on direct examination, that was actually a memo you sent to the mayor, right?
I did.
You told them not to.
Yes, it was a directive from my office.
Sir, it's safe to say that failed, didn't it?
It was largely a success. Of the 80,000 people in the streets that day after the NFC championship, there was only one fatality. And as difficult that is to say, that's why we took different measures and more in 2025 for the Super Bowl, just 2 weeks later.
So you're saying not greasing the polls was largely a success. Let's break that down. Sir, 15 was the max for that first parade. You went to 75 people climbing those poles.
That was right. In 2025, 75 individuals reported climbing those poles in a street of 80,000. And it was ultimately Mr. Nasir Muldrow was his name, an 18-year-old wrestler at a local high school in Philadelphia. He was the one who died.
So we'll get to that data. I'm just asking about those numbers. It was 5 times higher when you stop greasing the pole.
Yes, sir.
And like you mentioned, sir, someone died that day.
That's right.
An 18-year-old boy.
His name was Nasir Muldrow.
That was the first death that had ever happened on your watch.
Yes, it was, sir.
The first injury.
The first injury since 2008, even before I started my role as director. And it was terrible.
Entire time you greased the poles before those parades, you never had a single injury at all.
Yes, sir. That's exactly right.
So now that you had a death, you decided to do it again, didn't you?
Do what again, sir?
Well, sir, you didn't grease the poles for the Super Bowl, did you?
That's right. We instead launched different safety procedures that we thought would be more effective to prevent another death like Mr. Muldrow's.
But you decided not to go back to the plan, greasing the pole that had 5 times less people climbing those poles?
Absolutely.
Sir, let's break down those plans, sir. You had a fence you put up, right?
Yes, sir. In 2025, at the Super Bowl, my office had led a directive that every single pole in Philadelphia City Square would have a fencing put around.
So that wasn't more than about 3.5 feet tall.
Yes, sir. There were barricades.
3.5 feet tall.
I believe so.
So you talked about that media campaign. I've got that right here. This had 3,000 likes. Pretty close.
Yeah, it says 3,280 likes on that Instagram post.
So correct me if I'm wrong, Philadelphia is a city of about 1.5 million people.
1.528 million people.
I appreciate the exactitude, sir.
Of course.
Sir, that's not the only number that was on your mind when you made that decision, was it?
Of course not. There are a plethora of different numbers and procedures and safety guidelines to be considering when you're issuing the permits.
Well, I want to talk about one, sir. 10,000. Sir, that's how much money the city saved by not greasing those poles, right?
$10,000 is the cost to grease those poles.
Yes, sir, you actually admit that was a consideration you had when making that decision.
Yes, sir, it certainly was.
You didn't want to pay that cost, did you?
The greasing the poles ultimately wasn't working.
Sir, it wasn't working when you stopped 5 times as many people climbing. And so you admit, part of why you chose not to do that was $10,000 was too much, right?
Yes, sir. Too much for something that was not working.
Okay, sir. I have nothing.
Any redirect?
Yes, Your Honor. Can I just ask how much time I have left to redirect? 55 seconds. Sounds good. May I proceed? Mr. Edwards, you were just asking cross-examination about a report containing a number of 75 instances of pole climbing. I want to be clear, when did you receive the information that 75 people were climbing ungreased poles?
It was after the Super Bowl, after February 9th.
Thank you. Who can finish the answer?
So I was gonna say, we didn't know that that number rose that exponentially. We didn't have that information at the time, and I would be it.
Thank you for that explanation, sir. We have nothing further.
You look like you want to read across.
Very much so, Your Honor. May I proceed, Your
Go
Honor?
ahead.
Sir, you remember being deposed in this case, right?
Yeah.
Sort of truthful,
Of course,
the whole truth.
and nothing about the truth.
I'm glad.
Okay.
Approaching the witness to be copied. Okay. Sir, we actually asked you when you were deposed about these reports, right?
Yes.
I believe we're out of time for cross-examination. I don't know if that's something on your end.
I. 23 seconds left.
Still the middle?
Sure, if you want.
Let's do 11.
That's your deposition.
Yes, sir, it is.
Sir, you answered after the Eagles won the NFC in.
Objection, Your Honor. If this is an impeachment, then we ask that they follow proper impeachment procedure and ask the witness to confirm signature, his name, etc.
Yeah, I'm understanding that we have a bit of time crunch here. I think we all know that this is an impeachment, so I'm assuming you know how to do an impeachment. So just go ahead and ask your last question, but your objection is heard and outside the rules of this topic, I would say your objection.
Yes,
Go
Your Honor.
ahead.
Yes, Your Honor. Sir, you just told us that was after the Super Bowl.
Yes,
When you were asked here, you said after the Eagles won the NFC in 2025, we received about 75 reports. True.
Objection, Your Honor, to an improper impeachment. May I be heard?
Go ahead.
Your Honor, an impeachment requires a prior inconsistent statement. There's no prior inconsistent statement here. The line opposing counsel just read was, after the Eagles won the NFC in 2025, we received about 75 reports. And none of us disagree about whether or not the 75 reports were from the Eagles winning the NFC from that celebration that occurred. It's not inconsistent to read a line that says those reports were because of the NFC, and because that's what the witness testified to in cross-examination.
May I respond, Your Honor? And Your Honor, would it help if I?
No,
Yes, Your
that'd be
Honor.
great. Thank you.
Is
Yeah,
this
go
time?
Okay, perfect. And what's your response?
Yes, Your Honor. The statement that is the contradiction in this instance, isn't that it's because of the NFC Championship they received those reports? The exact language in this witness's deposition was after the NFC Championship, we received 75 reports. This witness's statement on redirect was after the Super Bowl. We received 75 reports about the NFC Championship.
Yeah, this is a proper impeachment. I'm gonna overrule.
Yes, Your Honor.
Yes, Your Honor. Sorry, I have that right. Yes.
yes, sir, that's what it says.
And Your Honor, given that I have no time, nothing further.
May I redirect, Your Honor?
Yes.
Thank you. Now,
Very, very briefly.
of course, Your Honor. I got one question for you, sir. Was the 2025 Super Bowl after the 2025 NFCs?
Yes, ma'am, it was.
Thank you. We have nothing further.
You would finally excused.
Oh,
All right, I'm gonna ask my same question. Rules say we gotta go right through. Is everybody okay to do that? Is anybody usefully for any reason?
We're perfectly fine.
Same here, Your Honor.
Great. Whenever you are ready. If you need to take a couple minutes, but just a few seconds to get your things presented.
3 seconds, Your Honor.
Yeah, but yeah, it's, yeah,
Okay.
like that's okay. I don't know why.
And if you need to get anything from here or from.
Yes, Your Honor. Thank you.
May I retrieve your
Yes, please, go ahead. Yeah.
Understood. $10,000. That's it. $10,000 is all it would have cost the city of Philadelphia to grease the poles. But yeah, that might sound like a lot of money for you or me. Maybe even for a visit. What am I talking about here? We're talking about the city of Philadelphia, a city that's supposed to be serving 1.5 million taxpayers. Now, look, I'm no fan of taxes. But when you go back to deliberate, I'm going to ask you to do some simple math. $10,000 divided between 1.5 million people. Half a penny. Half a penny per person, and Samuel Farnsworth would still be here alive. But he isn't. Because sure, the city knew the problem. They knew the fix. But $10,000? No. They just wouldn't pay for it. Remember, so they buried that is why we're here because the city of Philadelphia failed to exercise ordinary care. When they put $10,000 on a young man's life. You see a number of facts in this case are undisputed. In the law says people have a duty of care to care for people. When they're sick, you actually heard Mr. Evans. He told, yeah, it's my job and the city's job to keep people safe. So your job is to determine whether or not they exercise ordinary care to do it. And if they didn't, to determine if that's what caused Sam Barnesworth's death. We met that burden of proof. And we showed you that through those three simple facts we talked about throughout trial. They knew the problem. They knew the fix, but despite that fact, they just wouldn't pay for it. So let's talk about the problem. Members of the jury, everyone in this courtroom knows. When Philly fans win big games, they climb poles. The city told you that. The fan told you that. Everyone did. But that problem had a fix. And it wasn't rocket science, it was Crisco. You heard that the city put that on poles, and what happened? It worked. You see, it might not seem like a lot. Bringing out a bucket, putting things on those poles, but members of the jury, you learn this saved lives. And think about why the city wanted to make that fix. They told you it wasn't effective, but members of the jury recall Mr. Edwards told you on the stand. When they did that, when they greased the holes, not only did no one die, no one even rolled an ankle. For 7 years, no one got hurt. But despite that, the city decides to rethink their plans. And members of the jury, you don't have to wonder about whether or not they have that fixed because they told you that themselves. 15 people jumps to 75 through one simple decision. Not greasing the hole. And after they had that information, that proof, right in front of them, what do? They do it again. Right after a young man dies, the city decides, oh, that's fine. We're good. $10,000. No. That's too much. It costs members of the jury. But that price, they made Sam Farnsworth pay it instead. The other day, the defense has gotten up here and said they had these fences, 3.5-foot tall fences you heard helped people climb. A media campaign that reached a whopping 3,000 people. And they told you, no, that's good. We've replaced the pole greasing that's worked for years. I think we got it. I mean, look, it's a great post. If anyone read it, and they kept talking about a media campaign using that exact phrase. The mayor got the word out to everyone, but members of the jury, the evidence just isn't there. And when we go to deliberate, we're going to ask you to weigh something called causation. When you do that, you have this report. It's from an expert witness, not an expert witness that works for the city. A person that told you on the stand today they can't even keep their story straight. One time we don't have that information, the next time we do. You learn an unbiased third party found that decision, not to grease the poles, caused that death. Now look, again, not going to look you in the eye and tell you Lanny Davidson made a good decision. She didn't. But the city's not just supposed to protect us when we're acting perfectly. We're supposed to act reasonably. And exercise ordinary care, and we know they could because they did. And when everyone knows that Philadelphia's going to climb the hole, Philadelphia has a duty to stop. members of the jury, that's why I'm gonna ask that you find the city liable for negligence. Thank you for your time today.
Thank you, defense.
Yes, Your Honor. May I proceed?
Go ahead.
Your Honor, is it okay if I stand on that witness stand and give my post from there?
No.
That's how easy it is. To take no for an answer. It only takes one no to stop a reasonable person from doing something. Lanny Davidson is told no 6 times. She's told no once by her own friend Sam. Don't climb the pole. She's told no again. Don't climb the pole. She's told no by the police. Don't climb the pole. She's told no a second time by the police. Don't climb the pole. She's told no from this post. Don't climb the pole. She's told no by the media. Don't climb the pole. And Davidson doesn't take no for an answer. That's why we're here today. Because Lanny Davidson climbed the pole. And then she slipped. And she fell on Sam Farnsworth. They're suing the city of Philadelphia for negligence. Folks, they had a high burden. They had to show you that Sam Farnsworth death because the city of Philadelphia failed to exercise reasonable care. And that reasonable care, that failure to exercise it, that was a substantial cause in his death. You didn't hear that in court today. And to understand just why the city of Philadelphia isn't actioned, we told you all the ways the city said no. About the media campaign they ran, about the fences they had installed, about the police officers they had stationed there telling Lanny Davidson no, but Lanny Davidson doesn't listen. That's why we've raised our own affirmative defense, one of comparative negligence. But when you go back to deliberate, you'll be handed a set of jury instructions, and those jury instructions will tell you that for special cases like this, negligence goes both ways. Because if somebody is told no 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 times, and they don't listen, well, that means they are the ones who didn't exercise reasonable care, and that's exactly what Lanny Davidson did. So to understand just exactly how the city of Philadelphia isn't negligent and how Lanny Davidson was, we ask you to follow the media campaign, the fences that were up, and the police presence that month. Let's start with the media campaign. And you might be thinking that opposing counsel's point is a good one. There were only 3,000 likes on this post, a lot more than 3,000 people on the street of Philadelphia. Did he tell you this was the only post in that campaign? I mean, were there only 3,000 people who read this article? Or only 3,000 people who read any of the articles Ms. Davidson says she read? She climbed the pole? And folks, they want you to believe that the reason why all of these people were climbing the poles that day was because they weren't greased. Well, don't you remember when you were shown a picture of someone climbing a grease pole by using a rope? Or by burning a towel, wiping the grease off? Or by parking their car underneath the pole and climbing on the car to get to the pole? And the fact that greasing the pole just wasn't effective anymore is the reason why the city used media instead. Why the city trusted its citizens to listen when they explicitly said, "Attention, Philly, don't climb the poles." The fact that Ms. Davidson doesn't listen when she's told no, the fact that Ms. Davidson doesn't take no for an answer, well, that doesn't make the city of Philadelphia negligent. It makes Ms. Davidson negligent. But it wasn't that just she was told no from the media. She was also told no from the fence that was there. And you might be thinking, well, it's a 3-foot fence. How is that a no? And you know, it's kind of like driving up to a stop sign. Because the point of the stop sign is not to physically restrain your car from going any further. It's the way of the city telling you no. Stop for a second. It's the same point here. Because the fact is, when Miss Davidson sees a 3-foot fence in front of the pole that day, she doesn't stop for a minute. She doesn't stop at all. She hops that fence. She ignores the fence. She ignores the message that it sends. She ignores the no that it sends. So it's not just that the fence was a physical barrier, it's that the fence was a way for the city to tell its folks no. The fact that she hops it doesn't make the city of Philadelphia negligent for putting the fences there. Makes Miss Davidson negligent. And you know, up to this point, the no's might be a little metaphorical, a little symbolic. But the third point is the police that were stationed there that night. Now you know, because you'll be given an exhibit 6. That's the report of the officer who was stationed right outside that corner, right by the pole Mr. Farnsworth died. And that officer will tell you in the report, he says no 2 times. Thing is, that's not what we heard on the witness stand from Ms. Davidson herself. Because she insists on direct examination, well, everybody cheered me on. And then she insists on cross-examination, nobody told me no. In fact, she specifically says no officer told me no. And then you find out by the time we get to the cross-examination of Mr. Edwards that you have a confirmed police report saying that's not true. We know for a fact that she was told no 4 times that night. Twice by the police, twice by her friend saying. She doesn't listen. You know, the city, they talk about this whole media campaign, she doesn't listen. The city, they try to put fences on so she can't get. The city has somebody there telling her no, she doesn't listen. And I'm sure that the opposing counsel is going to get up here in a second and tell you, well, it's $10,000. I mean, they're really looking to save $10,000. And you know, he did some quick math. He said $10,000 would be half a penny a person for the city of Philadelphia. He said that's nothing. I agree, that's nothing for a city this size. Have they really convinced you that $10,000 is the reason why a city would fail to implement a public policy for $10,000? And don't get me wrong, I could use $10,000. But a city with 1.5 to 1.8 million people, $10,000 is a drop in the bucket. See, it's about the comparison of the $10,000 versus the cost of implementing that policy. It's about the comparison of the actions that Ms. Davidson took versus the actions that the city of Philadelphia took. It's a comparison of all the ways the city of Philadelphia says no, and it's a comparison of the ways in which Ms. Davidson won't take no for an answer. But folks, you're going to be the ones making the final comparison. You're going to be deciding who's more negligent. And when you do, remember the ways the city tried to tell its people no. And remember the ways where Ms. Davidson did take that. We'll ask you to find the city of Philadelphia not liable. Thank you very much.
Okay, Plaintiff, do you have a rebuttal?
Yes, Your Honor. Before I begin, we're just gonna ask how much time I have.
5.
Thank you. With the court permission,
Go ahead.
members of the jury. When you go back to deliberate, I want you to weigh 2 things. What's more reasonable? A public safety director choosing money over safety, or a Philly sports fan acting like a Philly sports fan? And when we cut a court report, none of them knows budget cuts cost lives. Thank you for your time.
All right, good job, everyone. We're gonna take a couple minutes to fill out our ballots. And then we have to wait for the all clear before we can converse with you at all. So go ahead, you can clean up your table. If you need to go to the bathroom, you can do that. and I will let you know when we're ready to give you.